The great chamber was a circle of quiet power. Light from a dozen different stars, filtered through vast viewports, fell upon the assembled beings. This was the heart of the Galactic Council. Park Minho stood in the center, a solitary figure in a simple dark suit. He felt the weight of centuries of human hope on his shoulders, but his face showed only calm patience. Around him, the council members watched. Councilor Vrox, his body a complex geometric form of shifting crystal facets, sat at the highest point. He did not have eyes, but the focus of his internal light on Minho felt like a physical pressure. To Minho's right was Ambassador Kalara, her delicate avian features unreadable, her feathers subtly shifting in color with her mood. The rest were a collection of forms, a being of shimmering gas contained in a suit, a stout creature with thick hide. Several others that defied easy description. "We have reviewed your species application for full membership," Vrox began, his voice a smooth, synthetic sound that filled the room. "The conclusion is unanimous. Humanity is not yet ready." Minho gave a small, acknowledging nod. He had expected this. The preliminary reports had been cold. "Your biological fragility is a significant concern," continued a being whose translator produced a wet, clicking speech. "Your short lifespans lead to rushed, unstable decision-making. You are ruled by chemical impulses you call emotions." From her place in the small human observation gallery, Lee Hanna, the xenobiologist, clenched her jaw. She had spent years here, studying these beings, sharing human medical data in good faith. To hear it weaponized against them was a bitter pill. Kim Yujin, sitting beside Hanna, showed no reaction. Her mind, that of a brilliant engineer, was already running through the disengagement protocols. She watched the flow of energy in the room, the subtle hum of the gravity stabilizers she had helped tune. Her work was everywhere here, invisible and taken for granted. "Your technological development is dangerously fast and lacks philosophical depth," Vrox stated. "You leap before you look. Your warp drive network, while quaint, is built without the proper safety considerations. It is a hazard to galactic shipping lanes." On the bridge of the human vessel Odyssey, currently docked at the Council station, pilot Choi Tai-yang listened to the audio feed. He snorted. "Quaint," he muttered to his empty cockpit. "I'd like to see his crystalline backside try a slingshot turn around a brown dwarf." Back in the chamber, Vrox delivered the final terms. "Therefore, full membership is denied. You will be granted the status of protectorate species. You will dismantle your intersystem warp gates and limit your faster-than-light travel to Council-approved routes under supervision. A period of guided development, lasting approximately 5 of your centuries, will begin. This is for the safety and stability of all." The silence that followed was absolute. 5 centuries of probation. A dismantling of their hard-won freedom. It was not a rejection. It was a demand for surrender. All eyes turned to Park Minho. The councilors expected protest. They anticipated desperate bargaining, emotional appeals, the very volatility they had just condemned. They were prepared for it. Minho took a slow breath. He did not look at Hanna or Eugen. He looked directly at the spot where Vrox's light was focused. "Thank you, Councilor Vrox, and members of the council, for your thorough consideration," Minho said, his voice clear and devoid of any anger or fear. It was polite, utterly neutral. "The message from humanity is clear." He paused, and in that pause, Kalara felt a first faint tremor of unease. This was not the reaction she had predicted either. "Therefore," Minho continued, "humanity will withdraw to its designated sovereign sphere as per galactic law. Article 7. We will cease all applications for integration and will no longer seek membership in this body." A soft murmur rippled through the chamber. Withdraw? It was an obscure clause, rarely used, meant for isolationist species who wanted nothing to do with the galaxy. No one had ever voluntarily chosen it after seeking membership. "We thank you for the knowledge shared during our petition period," Minho added with another slight bow. "And we wish the Galactic Council continued prosperity." He turned smoothly and began to walk toward the exit. His steps were measured, calm. Lee, Hana, and Kim Yujin stood from their seats in the gallery and joined him, falling into step behind him without a word. Their faces were serious, but showed no sign of panic or grief. Counselor Vrox's crystalline form shimmered, a sign of confusion. "Ambassador Park," his synthetic voice boomed. "You understand the terms. Compliance is not optional. Your species requires our guidance." Minho stopped at the great arched doorway. He looked back over his shoulder, not at Vrox, but taking in the whole chamber one last time. "Humanity understands. Goodbye." And then they were gone. The heavy doors sealed shut behind them with a final soft thud dot. The silence in the council chamber lingered for a long moment. Then a low hum of conversation started. The stout being grumbled, surprisingly reasonable. "They finally see sense." "They are ashamed," clicked the aquatic ambassador. "They know their deficiencies." Vrox's facets settled into a configuration of satisfaction. The human problem is resolved. They will return, of course, once they realize the isolation is unsustainable. And they will return on our terms. The plan had worked perfectly. A show of force, a firm hand, and the unpredictable creatures had folded. Their quiet departure was proof of their defeat. Ambassador Kalara said nothing. She replayed Minho's final look in her mind. It had not been the look of a defeated man. It had been the look of a man closing a ledger. A man who had made a final, irrevocable decision. Her feathers muted to a worried gray, a color none of the other counselors noticed or understood. Outside, in the polished corridor, the three humans walked briskly toward their docking bay. Hannah finally spoke, her voice a tight whisper. 5 centuries? The arrogance. Quaint warp drives, Eugene murmured, a tiny, hard smile on her lips. Their prime freighters run on principles we published in our initial Hello packet 100 years ago. They never bothered to read the footnotes. Park Minho said nothing until they were inside the secure human transit tube. He looked at his 2 colleagues. Signal the Odyssey. Prep for immediate departure. Send the general code to all human outposts, vessels, and embassies. Operation Clean Slate is active. Phase 1. We go home. On the bridge of the Odyssey, Choi Taiyang received the code. His fingers flew across his console. Received, Ambassador. Engine cycle initiating. It's going to be a quiet ride back. As the last human ship detached from the Great Council Station, Kim Yujin, from her engineering terminal, sent one final, silent command. It was a kill code for the proprietary human software embedded in the station's central life. Support regulator, a tiny piece of code she had installed as a gift to improve efficiency. The system would not fail. It would simply revert to its older, slower, less efficient mode. A negligible change. A change no one would notice until it was part of a much larger pattern. The Odyssey turned its nose away from the glittering hub of galactic power. Its engines, which were not quaint at all, flared with a unique blue signature. Then, with a smooth, silent acceleration that defied council physics, it shot into the dark, leaving only the memory of a too polite goodbye. The silence that followed humanity's departure was, at first, comfortable. In the Galactic Council chambers, business continued. New species were assessed, trade disputes between member worlds arbitrated, the vast, slow machinery of bureaucracy turned. Counselor Vrox took quiet satisfaction in the resolution. The humans, in their emotional haste, had chosen the path of least resistance. They were licking their wounds in their little corner of space. They would be back humbler in a decade or two. It was the correct outcome. On the fringe world of Tellara Prime, Administrator Kreen of the Resource Guild was not thinking about humans at all. He was thinking about quotas. The main processing plant for hyperstable duralloy was humming along, meeting its targets. The key to the process was the management of stellar plasma, siphoned from the system's angry sun. It was volatile, catastrophic work. Or it had been, until the humans arrived. He remembered the human technician, a quiet man with a ready smile. He had looked at their noisy, shuddering plasma dampeners, and in a week had presented a minor modification. A series of elegant little modules, humming softly, were installed. The plant's efficiency had increased by 300%. Accidents dropped to zero. The human had called it a temporary fix and promised to send the full schematics. He never did. He left with the rest of his kind. But the dampeners kept working. Kreen assumed the council had the knowledge. It was just machinery. On the third day of the new cycle, a warning chime sounded. It was soft, unimportant. One of the human dampeners had switched to a standby mode. The plasma stream flickered, causing a momentary power dip. The older, original safety systems, long dormant, grumbled back to life and stabilized the flow. Kreen's assistant, a young Talaran, flagged it. "It's nothing," Kreen said, reviewing the data. "The human widget is just recalibrating." Their tech was always a bit fussy. The assistant nodded, but made a note. It was the first note in what would become a very large file dot at the Pan-Species Medical Annex on Council Central. Dr. Ilera was conducting a routine check on the vaccine bank. She was reviewing the stock for the Verolian malaise, a nasty virus that could rip through a dozen species. The vaccine had been a nightmare to synthesize, requiring a constant, subtle adjustment to the protein chains to keep up with the virus's mutations. Then the human xenobiologist, Lee Hanna, had offered a solution. A small bioreactor, no larger than Dr. Ilera's hand, that did the work automatically. It was a black box. You fed it base nutrients, and it produced perfect, tailored batches. The principle was a mystery, but the results were flawless. Ilera went to initiate a new batch. The bioreactor's status light, usually a steady blue, was dark. She tapped it. Nothing. She called for a technician. The technician, after an hour of diagnostics, looked baffled. "It's not broken. It's empty. The culture inside is inert. Totally dead. But that's impossible. It's a self-sustaining system. Can we restart it? Use the backup protocol Hannah provided?" Ilera asked, a knot of worry forming in her gut. The technician pulled up the data file labeled human_protocol_restart. It was a simple text document. It contained one sentence. In case of failure, contact Human Medical Division for recalibration. There was no Human Medical Division to contact. Not anymore. Ambassador K. Lara found herself walking the long, curved observation deck of the council station. She often came here to think. Her eyes were drawn to a specific empty docking pylon. It was where the human vessel Odyssey had last been moored. The station felt different. It took her a week to pinpoint why. The gravity. It had a very slight, almost imperceptible vibration to it now. Before, it had been perfectly, soothingly still. She went to the station's chief engineer, a gruff Borland named Grash. "The gravity generators. Is there a problem?" Grash scowled, his forearms crossed. "Problem? No. They are running at 100%. They are just running louder. The harmonic stabilizers are working harder. We are back on the original Borland design specs. Perfectly safe. Just a bit less efficient. Were they more efficient before?" Kalara asked, though she already knew the answer. "Of course, before. When the humans were here. That little human, Yuzhin, She did something to the field controllers. Made them sing. Smoothed everything out. Dropped energy consumption by half. Brilliant work. But it was her code in a sealed module. When they left, the module shut down. We are back to basics. It is fine. Fine. It was a word Kalara was hearing more and more. Everything was fine. On Talara Prime, another dampener switched to standby. Then another. The plant's output became erratic. Alarms that hadn't sounded in years began to chirp. Administrator Crean was now sweating. He sent an urgent request to the Council for the technical schematics of the human plasma dampening system. The request was routed, denied, and sent to archival. The Council had no such schematics. The humans had provided the hardware, not the knowledge. A bureaucrat sent a standard reply: utilize locally available engineering solutions. Crean stared at the message in despair. Locally available solutions had a 50% fatality rate. Similar messages began to trickle into the Council's communication hub, a slow drip becoming a stream. The Tarka Combine reported their long-range communication array had lost range and clarity. The human-supplied signal boosters had gone dormant. The aquatic Selkath homeworld reported that the delicate ecological balancers in their oceanic farms a human-designed system that managed salinity and temperature with exquisite precision had reset to a generic, useless mode. Crops were dying. Each report was treated as a local maintenance issue, a minor nuisance. The idea that they were connected was not considered. Why would it be? The humans were gone. Their simple, helpful gadgets were failing, as simple gadgets do. The member species would simply have to build their own proper versions. Counselor Vrox reviewed a summary of the reports at the week's end. He dismissed it. This is the consequence of relying on unsanctioned, primitive technology. It is a lesson. The humans' shortcuts are failing. Now these worlds will learn to build properly to Council standards. He saw it as a positive development, a vindication of his stance. But Kalara, in her quarters, looked at the growing list. She saw the connections: gravity, medicine, mining, communications, ecology. All were fields where humans had worked, quietly offering simple fixes. All were now experiencing the same thing, not a violent failure, but a quiet stepping back, a reversion to a lower, harder, less efficient state. She called up the public records of the human departure. She watched the final statement of Ambassador Park Minho. We thank you for the knowledge shared during our petition period. The words had sounded like polite emptiness before. Now they sounded different. They sounded like a statement of account, a closing of a ledger. Her feathers paled to a stark, worried white as she realized a terrible truth. The humans had not just taken their ships and their people when they left. They had taken the ease. They had taken the grace notes they had quietly added to the song of galactic civilization. And without those notes, the music was starting to sound ragged and harsh and very, very difficult. The silence they left behind was not the silence of absence. It was the silence of a foundation, newly exposed, beginning to groan under a weight it was never meant to carry alone. The trickle of failures became a flood, and the flood became a crisis. On Talara Prime, the last human plasma dampener finally went silent. The containment field flickered and died. A torrent of raw stellar plasma erupted into the processing chamber. The safety systems, the old, slow Borland systems, reacted. They sealed the breach, but not before the entire primary refinery was vaporized. The shockwave crippled the orbital habitat. Millions were left without power, life support failing. It was not a quiet failure anymore. It was a disaster broadcast across the galactic net. Counselor Vrox watched the emergency reports flash across his console. The images of the burning station, the desperate evacuation pods, were undeniable. A cold, hard knot formed in his core. This was not supposed to happen. Primitive technology failing should cause a minor inconvenience. A lesson, not this. He summoned the chief of galactic engineering, a venerable silicate being named Old Car. The Tellara disaster. The report says it was caused by a failure of non-council technology. Human technology. Old Car's form shifted, a sign of deep unease. It is true, Counselor. The systems that failed were of human origin. But we have a comprehension gap. We do not have their schematics. Their modules are sealed. Our attempts to scan them cause them to degrade into useless slag. We cannot repair what we do not understand. Then understand it. Vrox's light flashed. You are the chief engineer. Reverse engineer it. We are trying, Carr said, his voice strained. The principles are alien. They do not follow standard energetic pathways. Their material science is a paradox. It is as if they chose entirely different branches of physics to solve the same problems. Elegant branches. We are trying to build a bridge by studying the ruins on the far shore. Before Vrox could respond, another priority alert chimed. This one was from the Pan-Species Medical Alliance. The face of Dr. Illyra, drawn and frantic, filled the screen. Counselor, we have multiple emergent health crises. The Varolian malaise has mutated past our ability to counter. Outbreaks are reported on 3 worlds. The Kyrillic skin fever, which we had eradicated, is back. Our stocks of the human-synthesized retrovirus are inert. We are facing pandemics of diseases we had considered controlled. The death toll is rising. Use your own medical science. Vrox demanded. We are. Illyra cried. But the human solutions were adaptive. They evolved with the pathogens. Our methods are static. By the time we synthesize a cure, the virus has changed again. They gave us a living tool. We treated it as a simple machine. Now it is dead, and we are back to using stone knives. The screen went dark. Vrox sat in the growing silence of his chamber. The comfortable theory of primitive tech failing was crumbling. This was something else. Ambassador Kylara entered without ceremony, her feathers a stormy gray. Counselor, the Tarka Combine is threatening to secede. Their economy is collapsing. Their entire data stream, their financial networks, their entertainment, everything relied on the human-boosted quantum relays for speed. Without it, interstellar trade is slowing to a crawl. Transactions are failing. They blame the Council for not securing the technology. They should have built their own infrastructure. Vrox snapped, but the words sounded hollow even to him. They did, Kylara said softly. It was adequate. Then the humans offered to make it better. For free, as a gesture of goodwill. Who would refuse? The scale of the problem was finally dawning on Vrox. It was not in one system, one field. It was a systemic collapse. Everywhere humans had been helpful, a critical weakness had been woven into the fabric of galactic society. A weakness no one had seen because it had looked like strength. He called an emergency session of the High Council. The chamber was no longer a place of quiet power. It was filled with tense energy, with sharp clicks and agitated hums. The Borland ambassador stood, his hide flushed with anger. The grain silos on our colony worlds are failing. The climate control systems, human-designed, have stopped. Billions of tons of food are rotting. We face famine because a thermostat we did not understand has decided to stop working. The aquatic ambassador's clicks were rapid with distress. Our homeworld's ocean filters are failing. Toxins are building up. The entire larval generation of the Selkoff is at risk. The human systems managed a balance of 1,000 variables. Our scientists say it'll take years to even model what those systems were doing, let alone replicate it. One after another, the reports came. Navigation beacons were drifting, causing shipping accidents. Waste reclamation plants on a dozen worlds were spewing untreated filth into water supplies. The very station they sat on was using 15% more energy, and the air recyclers had a faint, stale smell that no one could eliminate. Counselor Vrox looked at the assembled faces, a gallery of rising panic and dawning horror. He tried to project calm. We must pool our resources. Our greatest minds will work together to solve these engineering and medical challenges. We will overcome this. Old Carr, who was present, made a sound like grinding stones. With respect, Counselor, it is not a matter of minds. It is a matter of time and foundational knowledge. The humans did not give us better tools. They gave us tools that operated on a different set of rules. To build a new one, we must first discover the rules. This will take decades, centuries for some systems. The Talara refinery, the vaccines. These problems need solutions now. We do not have the time there. Their quaint technology bought us. The awful truth settled over the chamber. The human technology was not primitive. It was so advanced, it was indistinguishable from magic, and they had given it away like candy. And they had taken the key when they left. A young aide rushed to Vrox's side, whispering urgently. Vrox's crystalline form went utterly still. "Confirm it," he ordered, his voice barely a whisper. He turned back to the council. "A new report from our long-range defensive monitoring network at the edge of human space, near the old border marker." He paused, the words sticking. "They have detected massive, coherent energy signatures, far beyond anything in our records. FTL signatures that do not match any known drive. They are building something, and they are not using our principles to do it." The chamber was dead silent. The humans were not hiding in their corner, licking their wounds. They were active. They were building. With a technology that was a mystery, Kalara spoke into the silence, her voice clear and filled with a terrible certainty. "We did not judge them for their fragility, Counselor. We judged them for the source of their strength. Their emotional volatility is what drives them to innovate relentlessly. Their short lifespans make them desperate to build lasting legacies quickly. We told them their way was wrong. So they left, and they took their way with them. And now," she gestured at the reports of collapsing systems around them, "now we are discovering that their way was holding up a great many things we cared about." Counselor Vrox had no answer. For the first time, he felt a sensation his species rarely experienced. A deep, chilling crack in his certainty. It was the beginning of regret, cold and hard as space itself. The problem was no longer that human technology was gone. The problem was that they had never understood it in the first place, and now they were drowning in the dark. While the humans sailed away on a sea of light, they could not even see. The council chamber felt different. The air was still, but it was the stillness of a tomb. The grand viewports showed the stars, but they no longer looked like symbols of power. They looked like distant, cold eyes. Counselor Vrox sat, his crystalline facets dim. The reports were no longer trickling in. They were a torrent, a waterfall of disaster crashing down on them all. The silence was broken by the arrival of a small, fast diplomatic vessel. It was not a council design. It was sleek, angular, and moved with a silence that was unnerving. It bore no markings, but everyone knew. It was human. A message arrived for Ambassador Kalara only. It was a request for a private meeting at the old neutral trading outpost on Kyrios Station, on the border of what was once considered human-accessible space. The council debated for hours. Was it a trap? A gesture? In the end, they had no choice. Kalara was sent, armed with nothing but a plea and a crushing weight of shame. Kyrios Station was a ghost of its former self. Most of its docks were empty. The few beings there moved with a hushed urgency. Kalara waited in the designated docking bay. The human ship did not so much dock as align itself with the station, a seamless magnetic connection that made no sound. The hatch opened. Park Minho stepped out. He looked the same, calm, composed, but there was a new quietness to him, a sense of stillness that had not been there before. With him was Lee Hanna, the xenobiologist. Her expression was polite, but her eyes were sharp, observing everything. "Ambassador Kalara," Minho said, with a slight, formal nod. "Thank you for coming." "Ambassador Park," Kalara replied, her feathers struggling to settle on a color, finally resting on a neutral, respectful blue. "The Council thanks you for the contact." They moved to a small viewing lounge. The stars outside were bright. Minho did not sit. He stood, looking out. "You have questions," he said. It was not a question. Kalara gathered her courage. The failures. The plasma dampeners on Talara. The medical bioreactors. The communication relays. They are all failing. Lee Hanna spoke, her voice gentle but firm. "They are not failing, Ambassador. They are completing their cycles. They were never meant to be permanent. They were demonstrations, proofs of concept. We offered the finished, enduring versions during our membership talks. You were not interested in the theory, only in controlling the product." The words were a gentle slap. Kalara remembered the discussions. Human scientists eagerly explaining adaptive quantum fields, recursive bioengineering. Council scientists had dismissed it as fanciful, inelegant jargon. They had wanted the blueprints, not the philosophy. "People are dying," Kalara said, the words heavy. "Whole systems are facing collapse. You must see this is not reasonable." Minho turned from the viewport. His eyes met hers. There was no anger in them, no gloating, only a profound, weary understanding. "We see it, Ambassador. We predicted it. We provided models showing the dependency curves if our systems were removed. The reports were filed under theoretical exercises and ignored." Hannah leaned forward. "You saw our emotions as a flaw. Let me show you what that flaw built." She placed a small data crystal on the table. A hologram sprang to life. It showed a complex dancing model of virus. The Varolian malaise. Our fussy bioreactor didn't just make a vaccine. It held a perfect, living simulation of the virus inside it, constantly testing millions of hypothetical mutations against a library of counteragents. It wasn't a tool. It was a tiny, dedicated scientist working forever. "Your proper tools are just hammers. Ours were mines." The hologram shifted. It showed the plasma streams of Talara Prime, the dampeners. They didn't just suppress plasma. They listened to it. They predicted every surge, every ripple, and sang a counterfrequency a millisecond before the instability formed. They were conductors, not dampers. Your systems tried to contain the explosion. Ours convinced the explosion not to happen. Kalara stared, her feathers bleaching to pure white. The scale of the misunderstanding was catastrophic. The Council hadn't rejected inferior technology. They had rejected an entire new language of problem-solving because they found the teachers too loud, too impatient, too alive. "Why are you telling me this?" Kalara whispered. "Because you are the only one who came to see if we were okay," Minho said softly. "The only one who felt that first tremor of doubt. You are not to blame for the Council's pride, but you can carry the truth." He straightened. "The message for the Council is this: humanity has departed. Our focus is on our own future, built on our own principles. We are building, yes, things you will likely not understand for a very long time. We are not coming back." Kalara's heart sank into a cold abyss. "Then there is no hope?" You will let civilizations fall? Li Han's expression softened, but only a little. We are not monsters. We are also not saviors. The council demanded we kneel. We will not. But individual species, who had no say in that decision, who treated with us in good faith, they are a different matter. Minho placed a second data crystal next to the first. This contains a frequency, a direct narrowband quantum channel to a human diplomatic outpost. It is not for the Galactic Council. It is for you, Ambassador K. Lara, and for any other species representative who wishes to use it. If a species independently, as a sovereign entity, wishes to negotiate for specific aid, for trade, for the purchase of a single solution to a single problem, they may submit a request. It will be considered, case by case, peer to peer. No membership required. No surrender demanded. The offer was staggering. It was a lifeline, but one that completely bypassed the Council. It would shatter their authority. It acknowledged the galaxy not as a unified body, but as a collection of individual peoples, some of whom might still be worthy of trust. The Council will never agree to this, Kalara said, her mind reeling. The Council, Minho said, his voice now carrying a final, gentle firmness, as a governing entity over humanity, no longer exists. It is a fact, not a negotiating point. You may deliver the message. The meeting was over. As they walked back to the dock, Kalara looked at the human ship. It hummed with a low, potent energy she could feel in her bones. Your ship? It is different. From the open hatch, Pilot Choi Taeyang grinned. He had been listening. The Odyssey? She's old. This is a new runabout. The Odyssey is currently, well, let's just say she's busy helping with a construction project. Something involving a new kind of star. The casual statement held unimaginable implications. Kalara simply bowed her head, the human concept of awesome fear finally making perfect sense. The human ship detached and vanished, not with a flash of warp light, but with a subtle ripple in space that straightened itself out behind it. Leaving no trace, Kalara returned to the council chamber, the 2 data crystals in her hand feeling heavier than worlds. She delivered the message, word for word. She placed the single council address crystal on the floor in the center of the room. The hologram played. It was Minho recorded. His final statement was brief. The offer is appreciated but declined. Humanity has departed. Our focus is now on our own future. However, we are not vindictive. Should individual species wish to negotiate for specific aid or trade, on a case-by-case basis as independent peers, you may submit a request. The Galactic Council, as an entity, holds no jurisdiction over us. Goodbye. The message ended. The crystal itself dissolved into a fine inner dust dot in the ringing silence. Counselor Vrox looked at the dust, then at the faces of the ambassadors around him. He saw the calculation in their eyes. The avian would have her frequency. The Selkath would use it to save their oceans. The Tarka would use it to save their economy. One by one, they would go around him, around the council, to beg for scraps of the knowledge they had once spurned. His authority, the united galactic civilization he was the head of, was crumbling not just from external failure, but from internal desertion. The regret was now complete. It was no longer just about technology. It was about everything. They had not just lost the helpers. They had lost the right to lead. And they had done it to themselves. The humans were gone, and they had taken the future with them, leaving only the crumbling past and a handful of dust. The silence in the council chamber was absolute. It was a physical thing, thick and heavy. The dust from the dissolved data crystal was a tiny gray smear on the polished floor. No one moved to clean it. It was a monument to their failure. Counselor Vrox sat. His inner light, usually so bright and commanding, was dim and unfocused. He looked at the faces around the circle. He did not see united representatives of a glorious civilization. He saw a collection of desperate individuals, each calculating their own survival. The avian Kalara held herself with a new stillness, her feathers a muted gray. She had the frequency. She held the only key dot. The Borland ambassador was the first to break the silence. His voice was a rough scrape. My people are starving. The grain silos on the colony worlds. We will lose billions. I must. He trailed off, looking not at Vrox, but at Kalara. The request was clear. The aquatic sulcath clicked rapidly, its translator struggling. The larval seas are turning toxic. A generation will be lost. We have no time for council procedures. We must act alone. One by one, they spoke. Not to the council. Not to Vrox. They spoke their needs into the air, declarations of impending doom. And after each declaration, their eyes flicked to Ambassador Kalara. It was a silent vote of no confidence. The Galactic Council was no longer the solution. It was the obstacle. Vrox finally found his voice. It sounded hollow, cracked. We must remain united. We will pool our resources, our greatest minds. With respect, Counselor, interrupted the Tarka ambassador, her voice sharp. Our greatest minds are currently watching our financial networks disintegrate. The pooling will take months of debate. The human channel offers a direct line, a solution for a price. We are prepared to pay. You would go behind the back of this council? Vrox's light flared weakly. You would shatter galactic unity for a transaction? It was Kalara who answered. Her voice was quiet, but carried. Galactic unity, Counselor, was a blanket that the humans were helping to weave. They were adding strong, warm threads. You demanded they stop unless they followed our pattern. They left. And now the blanket is unraveling, and we are all getting cold. My people are suffering too. I will not let them freeze to preserve the idea of a unity that no longer functions. She stood. It was a simple motion, but in the formal chamber, it was like a thunderclap. I will return to my quarters. I will open the channel. Any species who wishes to submit a request to humanity for negotiation may bring their case to me. I will be a conduit. Nothing more. She walked out. No one stopped her. One by one, the other ambassadors rose and left, each avoiding Vrox's gaze. They had emergencies to manage, and hope, however humiliating, now had a very specific address. Within hours, the news spread across the galactic networks. The official channels were full of the Council's promises of a unified solution. The unofficial channels, the whispers, told a different story. There is a way. Talk to the avian. The humans are listening. In his private quarters, Vrox watched the reports. He saw the first shipment of human-designed ecological balancers, small and sleek, arrive on Selkoth. The oceans began to clear within days. He saw the Tarka Combine announce a new stable financial network powered by licensed quantum protocols. The economic freefall halted. He saw the Borlands receive simple, durable climate control units for their silos, not the magical singing fields of before, but robust, effective technology that stopped the rot. Each solution was specific. Each was paid for in raw materials, in artistic and cultural data, in promises of future cooperation. There were no political strings, no demands for submission. It was clean, cold, and devastatingly effective. And for each species that made a deal, their loyalty to the centralized council eroded further. The grand project of the Galactic Council was fracturing into 100 separate peace treaties with a power they had exiled. Weeks passed. The crises, the immediate fires, began to be put out. But the galaxy was forever changed. It was no longer a single, bright tapestry. It was a patchwork, with some patches strong and new, thanks to human thread, and others worn thin and frayed, held by the old, failing ways. Vrox was called to a meeting. It was not in the main chamber. It was in a small, plain room. The remaining members of the High Council were there. Their expressions were grim. "Counselor Vrox," one of them said, a being of slow-moving light, "confidence in your leadership has collapsed. The member species are forming independent blocks, negotiating separately with the humans. The central authority is meaningless. We are a debate club presiding over a ruin." Vrox felt no anger, only a vast, empty exhaustion. "What would you have me do?" "Resign." A new voice, one less associated with the error, regarding humanity, must try to pick up the pieces. If there are any pieces left to hold. He did not fight it. He simply nodded. The light within him dimmed further. He left the room, walked the grand, empty corridors of the station. He passed viewports. He looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity was building with a science that was a mystery, on a scale he could not imagine. They were not looking back. They had offered a hand in friendship, had it slapped away, and had simply turned and walked into a future so bright it left the old galaxy in shadow. He thought of Park Min-ho's calm, polite face. He thought of the technician Eugen, whose graceful code had once made the very gravity gentle. He thought of the xenobiologist Hana, who had tried to give them living cures. They had not been weak. They had been patient, and their patience had run out. His regret was now complete. It was not just for the lost technology, or the crumbling infrastructure. It was for the lost chance. A chance for a stronger, more vibrant, more wonderful galaxy, woven together with human ingenuity and the wisdom of the older species. They could have built marvels. Instead, they had built walls. And now they sat inside them, listening to the silence, while the sound of the human future faded into a distance they could never cross. He reached his own quarters. He did not activate the lights. He stood in the dark, looking at the stars. The message was clear, and it was final. Humanity had departed, and in their wake, they left only the aching, empty space where a better future should have been, and the certain knowledge that the Council had been the architect of its own obsolescence. All that remained was to manage the decline, and to remember forever the moment they had chosen to be lords of ashes instead of partners to builders.